We are the United States of Women.
The United States of Women.
The United States of Women.
Today on Fox 11 News In Depth, the state of women in America. After the issue of sexual assault exploded into the Me Too movement, now other concerns are gaining ground, like equal pay and equal power with men. We'll look at how an organization called the United States of Women is encouraging young people to work for a change. Plus,
my top priority is to find a photo of my grandparents and aunts and uncles that were murdered during the Holocaust.
One man's search for answers. What happened to his family members who disappeared during the Holocaust? Part of an amazing documentary. Also,
he looked to the heavens and he said, "Save my daughter, which will always serve you."
My conversation with Esther Leon Schwartz. She survived Hitler's hate. Now she works to end all hate. Fox 11 News In Depth starts right now. Hello, everyone. I'm Hal Eisner. They make up half the population, but do they get their fair share? Today, we're talking about and hearing from women in the United States. Many of them are demanding change, saying the events of the past few years prove things just can't stay the same. The allegations against Harvey Weinstein marked a turning point. Women making it clear they're not going to take it anymore.
You're going to have to deal with all of us.
Rallies and marches were held in L.A. and across the country. Me Too and Time's Up became catchphrases.
In terms of the crumbling culture of silence around sexual assault,
more and more women began speaking out.
Women have made it clear that we will no longer be controlled.
One after another, other well-known men have been accused or convicted.
Mr. Cosby, any comments, sir?
Now, other women's issues talked about for decades are starting to get more traction, like equal pay. The women's soccer team says they deserve it. And as they celebrate their World Cup victory,
all those in favor of equal pay say aye.
They're also suing the U.S. Soccer Federation. And more women are getting elected to Congress. Here in California, think of the two Katies, Katie Porter and Katie Hill. But some of the most visible of the new women, the four members of the squad as they're called, have run afoul of President Trump and his supporters. At last year's United States of Women convention, former First Lady Michelle Obama told the audience she's concerned that so many women seem to be turning their backs on the women's movement.
I'm concerned about us as women and how we think about ourselves and about each other.
Joining me now to talk about all of this is Danae Joseph. She's the California ambassador for the United States of Women, USOW, and Charity Chandler Cole with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. I'm glad both of you are here. You were at that convention where Michelle Obama was. What was that like? Was there electricity in that hall?
Absolutely. Every time Michelle Obama is in the room, it's bound to be an incredible time, and that's exactly what it was. One of the things that was phenomenal about that space was women came from all walks of life. They came from many different states. I remember meeting people who came all the way from the U.S. Virgin Islands just to attend the USOW.
USOW, United States of Women, what is that exactly?
So the United States of Women is an organization that was born out of the Obama administration's Council on Women and Girls.
And we're looking at video right now from that convention last year, pretty exciting thing. And, you know, let me ask you, Charity, you're getting involved in this as well, along with Danae. And what's your feeling about this organization? And let's move into that conversation about the way things are for women now.
Right. I think it's just a phenomenal opportunity, space, and platform for women. I personally signed up to attend the summit last year just because we were no longer limited to pick one topic, pick one thing you want to talk about that we can address as women, but instead it offered us options. It offered us a full continuum of things we could talk about, from entrepreneurship to reproductive rights to criminal justice reform. So it's an amazing time, amazing space, and amazing platform for women to really fight for and vocalize things we care about and issues we want to fight about.
We look at 2016, we see what women did in politics, and we see the effort to try to do that for 2020 as well. This whole effort to sort of mobilize women across the country, can you size that up a little bit for me in your mind?
Absolutely. The 2016 election process was an incredible one. We saw people come to the forefront, people like Ilhan Omar, like Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, one of the most diverse groups of people who came before the Congress. But along with that, we also saw a lot of sexism, a lot of racism, and a lot of xenophobia that accompanied their presence in Congress.
How do you think that resonates across the country among women?
How it resonates, I think it definitely mobilized people to want to make a change. Understanding that a lot of these things that we thought had died so long ago are still ever present, it made us want to move up and just make a difference and take a stance. And that's exactly what happened at things like rallies across the nation, Women's March.
Yeah, Danae is an ambassador. You want to work with her. What does an ambassador do exactly?
Not being an ambassador, but speaking for what she represents for me as a constituent of what they provide. They give voice to our issues. They provide, like I said earlier, the platform for things we care about, and they fight for us. And not just based off of their own opinions and perspectives, but they seek us out. They come find us and they ask us. Just recently, Danae was at a meeting in Lamar Park, and she asked us, what do you want me to focus on? What are the issues and the concerns you have for the community that I can take back to the United States of Women to address?
We see a lot of these issues being national issues.
Right.
Well, what about locally, though? I mean, we certainly have our share of issues here, right? Here in Southern California, right?
Homelessness is a major issue that we continue to see. Criminal justice is something that we saw. Just yesterday, we saw LA County and the fact that they decided not to move forth with funding that would build new prisons, things that would not only incarcerate women in communities of color, but it also take into consideration immigrants that would be impacted by the eradication of new jails.
I think I'd feel remiss if we didn't talk about the Great Divide,
right?
And the division in this country. I just sort of like to know your take on this. I mean, obviously, people are sort of taking sides, and women are caught up in the middle of all that.
Right. I think the side that we're on, we're trying to be on the right side of history. And everybody that we see who's making attempts to try to divide our communities, we all need to stand as one. That's the important thing that we need to stand on the side of. But when we have somebody at the very top who's making such divisive rhetoric that separates communities, and you have to think, what is the impact of this hateful rhetoric? We see things like mass shootings. There's no way we can't argue that there isn't a correlation between hateful rhetoric and what's taken place with white supremacy, what's taken place with xenophobia, and most specifically, what's taken place with policies that are being enacted in our nation.
You work for the AIDS Health Foundation. We certainly see that in the LGBTQ community.
Absolutely.
And so how has that gone? How has that been exacerbated by what's going on in the country?
What's so amazing about the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is we, of course, fight for HIV and AIDS rights, but we also look at all of the different implications that exist along with that. So you have the LGBTQ community, you have homelessness, we have houselessness. So we look at it from a stance of, let's flip this around. Let's use this to empower people instead of scare people into hiding, instead of, limiting ourselves and our abilities. Let's empower, use it as a source of empowerment to say, you know what, screw this. We're going to come out, we're going to show up, and we're going to fight for what we believe in and not allow, this divisiveness to set us back.
And I'll take that as your bottom line because I think both of you probably feel the same way. I want to thank you both for being here. Still ahead on Fox 11 News in Depth, one man's efforts to set the historical record straight. Many of his family members were killed in the Holocaust. So he traveled to Poland to find out more on what happened to them. His journey is the subject of a new incredible documentary. More on that coming up. Welcome back. The Nazis killed millions of people during the Holocaust, and still today, there are so many families dealing with that loss. In a lot of cases, they don't really know what happened to their loved ones, but a man from Los Angeles wanted to find out more. So he traveled to Poland to do some investigating. What he discovered is the subject of a new documentary called The Presence of Their Absence. Here's a clip.
There's a very strong pull that is making me go forward. And this shtetl here is what I imagine it used to be. This is what I've been waiting for 61 years to experience. When I got to Benjamin, I was really surprised to meet survivors and second generation like me. They invited me to the first Shabbat dinner in 75 years in a synagogue in this old apartment building. When Mrs. Lior started the blessing, I sensed my grandmother and my relatives with me. That was one of the most profound moments in my entire life.
That just had to be an extraordinary adventure. Joining me now are Fred Zeidman, the subject of the film, two very special guests that we're really thrilled to have here today, Holocaust survivors who now live in Los Angeles, Adela Mannheimer and David Lenga, and Donna Cantor, who produced this documentary. And, you know, Fred, I just wonder what that was like. You had this passion, this obsession, you had to find out this thing, and you went and did it. Talk to me about that for a second.
Well, it's something I always wanted to do, and is find my roots. It was a mystery in my family. My father didn't talk about it, my mother didn't talk about it, and I made a conscious decision to wait until they passed away in order to look for my answers. And it was probably the most greatest experience of my life.
Yeah, but it was an emotional experience, because I know in parts of that there's anger, in parts of that there's emotion.
There's a lot of emotion, and I want to say this, Hal, that originally when I was asked to do the documentary, I said no, because it was important for me to go to Poland and experience whatever feelings and thoughts came to me. And I didn't want to be distracted from it. However, the documentary was one of the greatest things that happened.
And Donna, as you went along with Fred producing this documentary, what did you learn? What did you learn?
I learned that there is a great difference between what you thought you knew, what the child's imagination told you, and what really then existed.
You know, Fred, you lost a lot of people, but David Lenga, you lost everybody.
Absolutely.
You are a 91-year-old, I hope you guys don't mind my telling your age. You're a 91-year-old survivor?
Yes.
How'd you get out of there, and who'd you lose, and what do you remember?
When the war started, I had an extended family of about 100 people. And when the war ended, just 2 people survived, myself and my father. I didn't know about it right away. It took me many, many, many months to find out that he's alive. But I finally found him, and it took me another 8 years to actually see him in person, because we were dispersed. He went to Poland after liberation, and I went to Sweden. And we didn't know about each other.
You've lived this your whole life. You give testimony. You tell people about what happened. Why is it important for you to tell people what happened in those years in the 40s?
Okay, it is important because the first 20 years of my being liberated, I, and along with so many other survivors, were unable to open up and to tell the depth of our sorrow. We were just completely, what they're calling in Yiddish, verklemmt. We were just tied up in knots and could not speak about it. But after 20 years, people started accepting the fact that the Holocaust actually did happen, and the surviving community opened up. And I felt it my obligation to speak about it, to enlighten people, and to make them aware that if you see evil and you are not doing anything about it, if you are apathetic, if you feel it's not touching you at this moment, you are in an illusion. And I'm trying to bring this home with my speeches.
Adela, I know that you feel the same way as David, because we talked before this show. Can I tell everybody how old you are? Can I tell everybody how old you are? 98. You're 98 years young. You've experienced an incredible life. But those years when you were a teenager and you were in the concentration camps, what do you remember? How did you get out?
Okay. When I walked in the 5 months dead march, I was in a mountain dead gyros. And I touched myself and I saw that I am warm, so I walked out. And this is the miracle, what I'm sitting here with you.
Because you didn't think you'd survive?
No, when I survive, and And when I had my son and my daughter, I told them everything what I went through. But other people didn't want to make the children upset. They did not tell them the story, but I did. I couldn't live my life with not telling my children what I went through.
And now you tell others as well. You've taught classes and you've given lectures. David, you and Adela are absolutely amazing. I want to get back to Fred because this documentary, you found your great-grandmother's tombstone. You found the house that your father was in torn down, and you ended up doing a little vandalizing yourself by writing something on that building. I want you to tell me about these ups, these downs, this roller coaster of a journey in this documentary.
It was a roller coaster, and you brought up my emotions. And there are certain spots in my journey in which I couldn't help my emotions. Going to the address where my father grew up, building is decimated, and there's a parking lot sitting there.
And this right here we're looking at is the gravestone where your great-grandmother was buried, right?
My great-grandmother and my great-grandfather.
Right. And that house, when you found out that house was decimated, it destroyed you?
What it did was it put me on in a different plane. And I started to think about my father and his family, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my aunts and my uncles, who had lived there in this large building and going to school, having their life, living their life, and so on. And it was all gone. There was no trace. It just became vanished. It was like they never existed, and that was very bothersome to me.
I've got to ask you, I'd be remiss if I didn't, as we look at video of your father's home that was taken down. Today's environment, today's world, the things that we see, Fred, in the world today, politically and with hate being discussed a lot. Well, what's your feeling about today's world?
Well, today's world is turned upside down as far as I'm concerned. I always grew up taught by my parents that all people are created equal. It doesn't matter if they're black, they're white, they're brown, whatever. If there are good people and there are bad people, and you should treat them as they are. The immigration issue, I disagree with our president on that. I feel that people are human beings first. People are not illegal. The neo-Nazi, the rise in anti-Semitism, I feel is directly it's being fueled by the president.
In terms of today, I think that one can go to Poland with some freedom to see, if we're talking about just in relation to the film, and see a place that at one point, if you had gone into some of the cemeteries where Fred went and you complained to the police about the graffiti that he saw that was so moving to him and so surprising to him, if he'd gone in 1942 to complain about it, they would have deported him or arrested him. So there's a freedom today to go back to those places, whether you feel you want to go to them or not. Where you can actually look at life as it might have been.
As it might have been. Thank you all for being here. It's quite the documentary, and congratulations on it. And still ahead, another incredible story of survival from the Holocaust, an incredible woman who has lived an extraordinary life.
He looked to the heavens and he said, "Save my daughter to always serve you." And he threw me over the barbed wire fence into the arms of the soldiers.
Her name is Esther Leon Schwartz. She once escaped hate, and now she's trying to teach all of us how to overcome it. The recent mass shootings in Gilroy, California, El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, have once again raised the issue of hate in America. And once again, we're asking questions like, how do you stop it? I once asked that question to a woman here in Los Angeles who survived Hitler's Holocaust. She had a novel solution based on a fundamental belief that people are not born to hate, they learn it.
Es lebe die nationalsozialistische Bewegung! Es lebe Deutschland!
That's my aunt.
To this day, Esther Leon Schwartz is terrorized by the thought of this man, his systematic genocide, the Holocaust of 2/3 of the Jewish population across Europe.
The fear inside and being scared never leaves you. It never left me. It never has left me.
Born in an alley in France, her early life was frightening.
We were always running. I was always scared, always running. Then I remember when we were running and people, the Nazis were chasing us.
Schwartz was 4 years old at the time.
My papa picked me up. We were at the wired fence, and he looked to the heavens and he said, "Save my daughter, to always serve you." And he threw me over the barbed wire fence into the arms of the soldiers.
Though the three survived, her grandparents, aunts, uncles, and others she left behind were killed by the Nazis in the concentration camps.
We as humans are not born with hate. We are born pure.
She believes a lack of nurturing as a child creates kids filled with hate who grow up to be hateful adults, now and back when Hitler ruled Germany.
I feel we are born pure. Something goes wrong. Is there any difference from then to now? No.
Her idea to fix that is simple. She says after the Pledge of Allegiance in school, kids should form a circle and on a daily basis talk about what they're grateful for.
Why would that make a difference?
Because they grow up to be buddies, because they're acknowledged, because they get a voice. They get a voice.
To Schwartz, whether in 1940s Germany, 2016 Orlando, or 2017 Charlottesville,
Jews will not replace us!
Hate is hate.
And hate hurts.
You feel very rejected. You feel you have no self-worth.
Where should we go?
Don't go east, that's for sure. They hate you there.
The Jewish Journal once wrote that the 1994 Oscar-winning Best Picture Schindler's List is widely credited as the film most responsible for teaching about the Holocaust to the mainstream. Esther Leon Schwartz, a cantor whose strength is drawn from the hate she's experienced, sings and hopes that someday there will be no hate.
Welcome back. You can hear more about the documentary we've discussed and the lives of those with us on my podcast, What the How. You can get it wherever you subscribe to podcasts or just go to whatthehowpodcast.com and you can download it there. After talking about hate, let's end with some positive words. How about be nice to someone? It'll make you feel good and them. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.